set?
All
Yes.
set.
All right, let's all put our hands together for Chris, everybody. Chris.
It was the kind of promise that happens in an instant and alters your life forever. Like a tattoo on your soul that gets inked in there somehow, whether you agree to the task or not. A deathbed promise. A mother whispers to her son, Joseph, I'm almost gone. Take care of your brother. Look after Eddie. And Isabella Doherty Hall, mother of 6 and pregnant with her 7th, died in the flu epidemic of 1919 that swept mercilessly through Philadelphia. There weren't enough graves to bury the dead. There weren't enough grave diggers. 14-year-old Joe had to take 3 buses carrying pickaxe and shovel to the faraway cemetery where his mother's body had been taken. This was my great-grandmother. This was my great-uncle. Joe was the perfect choice to take care of Eddie. He was the biggest, strongest, kindest brother. And Eddie was the exact opposite. Joe was portly and ruddy and red-haired. Eddie was lean and dark, gaunt. He looked like Abraham Lincoln. High cheekbones, always stubble. In fact, he was older than Joe, but only chronologically, because during his birth, the umbilical cord had gotten caught around his neck and had cut off just enough oxygen that it became a noose for the man that would have been Mr. Edward Hall, Jr., and instead made him forever just Eddie. But Joe was the perfect choice. Joe loved looking after Eddie. He loved giving his all to Eddie, and Eddie loved giving Joe the slip. Joe was great. Joe, like I said, was the opposite. Joe looked like he was always going to an adult first communion. Always pristine and perfect. His shoes shone like he was standing in the baptismal waters. And Eddie would wait until all the other men were out of the house and then sneak out on one of his famous trips. He would take 3-day trips. No one knew where he was. The entire neighborhood was always on watch for Eddie sightings. And he was always brought home by the same neighborhood cop, who Eddie hated with a vengeance. Every time he saw the cop out the screen window, he'd yell the same greeting, "Rat! Eat cheese!" And the cop would always say, "Morning, Eddie." Well, one time, the cop was on vacation. There was a rookie. He sees Eddie wandering around for days. Takes him down to the precinct thinking he's a vagrant and a criminal because he found numbers on a piece of paper in his hat band. And back in the day, that was the MO for a numbers runner. And then somebody else, another neighborhood pal that was also being arrested at the time, recognized Eddie and said, "He ain't no numbers runner. Those are the numbers of his address, in case he forgets where he lives." So there he was, brought back home. And we're very proud. It's a cherished family heirloom. Eddie, of all the brothers who deserved one, was the only brother who ever had a mugshot. Eddie also once brought home a girlfriend. Oh, he was very proud. They tried to wend their way up the straight stairs, making the same kind of noise and laughter that drunk people do when they're trying to be quiet, like a wagon train coming up the stairs. And instead of finding paradise at the top of the stairs, there was Joe, in his white robe, like a big avalanche of righteousness that had just cut them off at the pass. And he banished the floozy, and Eddie went right into the hot bathtub, and he started to scrub her fingerprints right off his poor little brother. But Eddie was wailing. Eddie said, "Hey, Joe, and my girl, and my girl." And Joe kept scrubbing, and then he stopped to cup his brother's head, and he said, "No, Eddie, everybody's girl." And he just held him while he cried out his broken heart. Eddie died suddenly one day of a brain aneurysm in the same little living room that had framed most of his life. The same way that his brain had fought to come into the world and had been altered, his brain fought again and lost. He collapsed into the last few seconds of his life, and they found him curled up, just like the cherished little protected human being that had been inside his mother. A little creature full of the promise of a life of love and adventure. And thanks to his mother and brother, promise kept.
All right.